So everybody has a story to tell, and for the first time, um, it's a lot easier to publish books directly as opposed to having to go, find an agent and shop it around, with a publisher, and it's a lot quicker, right? So technology has made the process a lot easier for you as an individual to do it yourself. Just to look at some numbers, these are from author earnings. They have a lot of really great statistics on ebooks and publishing. But if you take a look at this pie chart here, these are the number of units sold online. So ebooks have really, just from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, have really started to dominate the market. As far as the retail dollar sales by format, I know it's a little light in this light. One of the reasons why print is so big there is things like textbooks, right? Textbooks cost a lot more than like a standard ebook or children's books. The trend for independent authoring, you can see the blue line is going up, where traditional, the big 5 publishers is, going down. There's a big reason for that. I mean, if you look at the royalties that you would get from a traditional publisher, unless you're a New York Times bestseller, you're only going to get between 10 and 20%. Whereas ebook sales, you can get as much as 70%. That's a big difference. And you're putting in a huge amount of effort to write these books. So you really should get more of the money. So in terms of publishing, there's really 3 ways to go. The traditional, right? In addition to seeing less sales, it usually takes a lot longer to go that route. By the time, depending on the material you're publishing, it could even be out of date compared to an ebook. If you publish it today, depending on the platform, it could be available within 24 hours online. So that's kind of neat. So self-publishing, and we're going to go through the process from start to finish. And then I also want to mention like a hybrid model or using a distributor. So distributors would do some to, not all, but a lot of the things that independent authors might choose to do on their own. And I'll give you an idea of what those tasks are and how much that eats out of your profits. I want to start with the writing process because this is really the same no matter which way you go. How many of you have written a book? How many of you are working on a book? How many of you want to work on a book? You should think about it. I mean, everybody has a story. When the idea first came to me, I mean, I spend most of the time working with faculty, and faculty publish, right? And I was thinking, wow, this is really great. They have passive income coming in from these books. And I'm like, I have an expertise to share. I have a story. And then I really started, when I was, working on it, thinking, man, everybody has a story, something of value that they can share with others. Maybe your ebook is shorter. Maybe it's bigger. Maybe you're a little bit more imaginative and you want to work on a fiction book. But all of you have something that you can share. One of the other things that kind of drove me to publishing was I was doing a lot of emailing of the same stuff. Like I'd have these meetings and I would constantly go through the same stuff, and I'm like, this would be so much easier if I could give it to them ahead of time, like a book, and then we can come and sit down and go through more of it. But for everybody starting off, whether you go the self-publishing route or the distributor route, it all starts with the writing process. And so I thought it would be helpful to kind of go over that. Think about how many years in the future these kids won't even know what that is. But I really like this quote because one of the best things you could do is kind of join a story cartel or just join people that are doing the same thing that you're doing. It helps in terms of support, like you're not going through it alone, and to promote each other's work, right? There's always a skill overlap, right? Somebody might be really good at promoting on YouTube and somebody might be really good at promoting their book on blogs, you can teach each other and help each other out. I work very closely with a bunch of authors, and it's helped me immensely. So I really recommend it. Whether you do that with a friend, a buddy you already know, or somebody that you're working with professionally, but find somebody to work with. This was one of the best pieces of advice I got throughout the whole process. 15 minutes a day. Everybody is always very busy, and it's easy to say I want to do, but it's hard to actually get things done. Set the time aside, 15 minutes a day. It sounds like a very small amount, right? Everybody can contribute 15 minutes. But if you dedicate yourself to sitting down for those 15 minutes, chances are you're probably going to write a little more than 15 minutes. And even if you don't, that 15 minutes adds up. Things that I used, first of all, I use Google Docs. Our Google Drive is not being data mined as opposed to the consumer Google products. And we also don't have to worry about things like storage limits, so I really like using our Google Docs. I set up a folder for the book, and then I made each chapter its own Google Doc, right? And then other tasks that we'll talk about, like marketing and things like that, they all had their own place in that structure. It also makes it very easy when you are working with an editor to share your files. You know exactly what the latest version is and where it is, as opposed to sending things through email that gets really messy really fast. I also kept a paper notebook, so sometimes you just, you've got like 5 minutes to sit and think. You might jot something down. I keep a little moleskin in my purse. Inspirational flipboards and bookmarks. I use a combination of two things. So whenever I'm surfing the web, either on my phone or on the browser, I come across like a resource that I know, oh, that'll really help me when I start talking about XYZ, or I want to remember this when I go to do that, right? It's also my inspiration bucket. When I see a book where I go, wow, this was a really brilliant thing they did, I want to work that into my own project. So I might not have time to sit down and use that resource, but if I keep it in this bucket, it's something when I do have time, I've found them, right? I don't have to go hunting for it. So I just made a magazine called EdTech Resource, and I keep that magazine private for myself because I really don't want to share that one. But what it looks like, and it's just a simple click, I'll put a resource for you up on the site if you're interested in using this. It's similar to Pockets, if anybody uses that. But it will grab the image, the title, the first paragraph, and then you can also, there's social tools, you can make comments and like things and share things if you wanted to. But on the phone, you flip through it. That's why it's called Flipboard. So this is great for curating resources that are chronological, that you don't necessarily want to go finding, that kind of stuff. And you can curate it with other people too, so they can contribute together. The other tool that I like is social bookmarking, which just so happens to be the first chapter of my book. And the reason being, A, it was the first thing that got me into using technology in education. But B, it is such a great resource. How many of you save favorites on the web? This lets you save your bookmarks so that you can tag them. So it's like you're making your own Google of bookmarks. So instead of saying, oh yeah, I saved that site, where is it on this list? I can say, oh, I'm looking for that science website, or I'm looking for that science website, that also had a video, right? So you're choosing which tags to use to save the resource, and then you can search by tag. I have, I think, about 15,000 bookmarks that I've saved since 2005. So it's literally become my own Google, right? There's another really cool benefit to this.
Without the ads.
without the ads. I do pay for this service. It's $11 a year, but I consider it totally worth it. This one really is more like a filing cabinet. Anyhow, having some kind of system where when you come across inspiration to save it, that way when you're sitting down ready to work, and you're like, what should I do? Pull out your little book, right? Pull out either your Flipboard or your Pinboard or whatever you're using. And then people also really recommend journaling, like just every day, just a little reflection, think back on, you know, what went right, what went wrong, things that you want to remember to do in the future. You know, there's all kinds of help out there in terms of journaling. So the other part of the process for me was once I figured out, hey, I want to write a book. This is what I went to. I guess I'm used as a former math teacher of thinking of problems in terms of breaking it down to something simple. So for me, it was, well, what are the main tasks I really need to do? Come up with a title, come up with a structure. So in my mind, I'm like, I want to tell a story and then have resources. And so my general structure is the very beginning of the chapter, it tells some kind of story of how I came across this technology or what I used it for. And then I spent the rest of the chapter talking about how you can go about using it in your own practice. I came out with an outline of all the different topics and tasks. Once I had that, I made those Google Docs for each of them, right? And then I started putting in little blurbs, like little things that I associated with those topics or story ideas, or, you know, some of it was a picture, some of it was a word. Just started filling in that outline. And then I started putting in different links, right? And then I started filling it in with phrases and sentences. And pretty soon they were like paragraphs. It was really fun, right? So just break it down to smaller tasks so it doesn't seem so big. Another really great piece of advice I got from my editor, and I'll talk about editing a little later on, but don't worry about so much the editing part. You know, when we write emails, we sit there and we go, oh, you know, the grammar's not right here, and this doesn't sound right, and what if they think this, right? You're just sitting there writing, and just write. Don't worry about any of that. Just write. Your goal is just to write. Once you have it written, then it's easy to go back and say, okay, I need to clean this up a little bit, or, you know, talk with your editor about what you want to do there. So what kind of software are we using to actually start the ebook? Well, you can use Word if you wanted. That's the very, very easy, free way to go. I didn't do it that way, but I have a link with a great article that has everything you need. There are also places that will sell templates to you, so you can make it look a little bit more like a book. You know, the chapter formatting and all of that kind of stuff. I used eBooks Author. How many of you are Mac people? Okay. The reason I went with this was it's free, and I was able to include multimedia. So most people think of ebooks as just, you know, a book, but on a digital screen. And they're kind of not taking advantage of the fact that you can actually include multimedia in this. So what I did was I included images, video, and links. Okay, so it's not just text on a page. iBooks Author made it very easy to do this.
Is that Mac-based?
It's Mac-based. That's the only negative to it. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to do something similar but on a PC, Amazon has I think it's children's book creator. Even though it says children's book, you don't have to make a children's book with it. But what it allows you to do is also include multimedia very easily. Mm-hmm. The caveat to that, there's two. One is it will make your file size larger. And when we talk about pricing, sometimes that matters. The other thing is I wanted mine on Amazon and iBooks. And so to publish it on Amazon, I had to use an eBooks template, and it doesn't quite allow you to do exactly the same formatting as on iBooks. So like the videos won't play on the page. You have to hyperlink them. And instead of the nice formatting where, you know, like I have little sidebars and I have, you know, the way the paragraphs and the graphics flow, it's all laid out in a column. The content is the same, it just looks a little different. But that's something to keep in mind if that's what you're going to do. There's also other software out there. On the EdTech resource, I have a couple of them listed, and like one of them looks kind of like Word, but it's set up for a book, where you have a side pane, so you can see all the chapters and the pages in the chapter, as opposed to Word, you're working in one document, which doesn't really look like a book. And then some reviews. But really, when picking the software, you have to decide what's important to you, you know, and what platforms you want to use. So some tools that are really useful, I use Grammarly because I have a paid account. We have one. If your department doesn't have it, they have free ones. There's also Pro Writing Aid, but I found that really useful because I'm a math person, not really an English person. There's also this really neat Hemingway app. If you can take a look at the interface, it does things like it shows you like passive voice as opposed to active voice, and yeah. Again, I'm not an English person, so all of these things are really useful. It will also tell you how many words and the readability according to grade level, which might also be really useful in other ways. And then Count Wordsmith. Wordsworth is really neat. It's very light here, but you would just paste your words in, and it does additional things like, you know, to words and characters, it'll tell you like how many cliches you use, and, you know, other fun things. So, cool. You know, it's a neat writing tool. I also have these on the site for you. We'll talk about using social media and promoting. That's very useful stuff. So the editing part. I got lucky. My editor, I actually bartered with her. I helped her develop an online class and some videos, and she edited my book. I was like, yes. She used to work at Time, so I was like, that's pretty great. Most people might not know an editor, so I have a lot of sites listed that have editing services. I'll tell you, it's not cheap. They do it by the word, and they also do it by the page. Roughly between 4 cents to 10 cents a word, which doesn't sound bad. $10 to $25 a page, sounding worse, but this can run you a couple $100 up to thousands of dollars. So it all depends on your writing level. It depends on how much of a turnaround. Some of these take 6 months. Some of them are quicker. There are companies you can use. There's also freelancers. You could also maybe reach out to students, you know, that are in the English department. They're gaining experience. You know, you're gaining cheaper labor. So there are ways to kind of mitigate that expense, but having an editor is critical. Like I mentioned before, I'm a math person, not an English person. So she was able to make my writing sound a lot better. This is amazing to me. So that's something you do have to consider. And design, what goes into design? So the formatting of your book. I mentioned templates. Templates are great. They can make your work look a lot better, but kind of, take out well, I'm not a designer, but you can still kind of look like one today. So templates are very useful. There are also services out there that will format your book for you. So I have links to both. And then cover. We all say that, but we do when it comes to book. The cover is important, just like the title. So there again are companies and people that book designers can cost from $100 to $500 if you're pricing it. If you want to do it yourself, there's a really great tool called Canva. Do you know of Canva? I'll show you this one because it's neat. It's something you can use in your social media campaigns. It's something you can use for anything, really. They do have, pre-made book covers, and you just swap in your text and your images. It's great. So that would be like a free option. So the publishing part, right? Like all of that other stuff could take, some people will tell you, I can make a book in a week. You're like, okay. Most people, it takes several months or even years. The publishing part, this is where the magic happens. You have direct self-publishers, and this is what the market looks like now. Most books are being sold on Amazon. So if you want to do it yourself, the easiest route to take is just publish on Amazon. That way you only have one place to manage. You have to create an account, you have an author's page, you have to decide your pricing. There's a lot of metadata that goes into the book part. But the good thing is, if you're only doing it on one platform, you only have to manage one account. If you're doing it yourself and you decide, well, I want my book to go everywhere, there's more than just these three. You see that others, 3.7% of the pie. But you'd have to manage each one individually, which is kind of a lot. And each platform has its own ways of doing things. It's not a bad route to go, but I would suggest just doing it in one place if you had to pick Amazon. For me, I really wanted that multimedia, interactive part, so I went with Amazon, but I also publish on iBooks. And then if you decided to use a book distributor, some of the pluses and minuses, and this really great graph came from a website that I'll link for you. The cost part, they will take a percentage. So that could be a fee, a flat fee, or it could be, like 10%, say, of your sales. It's still going to be a lot better going that route than traditional publishers. Remember, they were taking like between 10 and 20%. So you would still make about 60, but it will cut away at your bottom line. The convenience part, you only have to manage things in one space, which is kind of nice. There's going to be some delay in terms of payment because it's going through another system. And then in terms of the metadata, you're really one size fits all, right? You do it their way and then they figure out the details. And there's also going to be a delay in terms of the changes that you want, any changes you want to make, because it's going to go through their platform first. But if it's your first time and you're not very tech savvy, or you don't have a lot of time to devote to it, use an aggregator. It's going to save you time and frustration, and it'll cost a little bit of your profits. You don't have to pay them up front. Some aggregators will also offer things like book covers or other parts of the process. ISBN, do you need one? Well, you kind of don't. So if you direct self-publish, you don't have to have one because they'll give you an identifier on that platform. The thing that it doesn't do is report sales to, let me get this right. It doesn't report the sales to the industry sales reporting agencies. So if that's important for you, you better have an ISBN number. And you need to have one for every format you have. So if you have it on different platforms, you have to have a different number. ISBNs are expensive. They're only sold by one company, so they have the market on it, and they tell you you absolutely have to have one, but I find that a little suspect. If you want to learn more about ISBNs, I have links for you on the website. I'll also mention if you want it in the library system, you also have to have an ISBN. So really depends on if that matters to you. So the marketing and promoting part. And a lot of this stuff can actually be done before you even publish. I put it at the end because it's kind of its own topic. Pricing. So for the pricing, Amazon, if you go with Amazon, it's either 70% or 35%. If your book is between $2.99 and $9.99, then you get 70%. If it's below or above, it's 35%. There's also, I mentioned size limits before. There's also some of that involved. They have a great chart, and it also includes data on when you sell your books like internationally, the percentages. But iBook store, it's 70%. Like they don't set a difference like Amazon does. Those distributors, it's generally about 10%, or I mentioned before, a flat fee. So depending on how many books you're expecting to sell, maybe the percentage is better, maybe the flat fee is better. And I'll also mention for this, they have their own, each platform has its own reporting tool that'll tell you like number of units sold, total sales, and that kind of thing. Strategies for marketing include social media. There's no getting away from it. So I like this map because it can kind of organize it in a way for yourself. Everybody should have a website. If you're selling a book, you really have to have your own website. You can have a website for the book, or you can have a website for yourself and include the book on your website, but you gotta have a website. On that website, you can have a link to the bookstores, right? And depending on how you set up your website, but you can use things like Google Ads, or if you're an affiliate, you can actually set it up so that you make money on somebody buying your book through your website in addition to the sale, which is kind of cool. That's called affiliate marketing. On your website, you should really have something that captures people's email addresses so you can tell them things like book launches and new products. A way of measuring traffic, Google Analytics is pretty much the best way to go. Some of the things you could have on your website, a bio page or a CV, portfolio. It really depends on how you're using your site, but then give them a way to contact you. And then the blog today is almost as important as the website. The blog is a very easy way of really making a community around what you're doing. It also allows you, like a website, you might update 3 or 4 times a year. A blog is something that you can regularly give content, push content out. And you could do things like, I work with an author who, he's been blogging now for the last, 4 years. Every week he writes just a 700-word post, a little video or a picture in it. And so what he's done is he's taken a collection of 15 chapters and turned it into an ebook, right? Super easy to do. So you can think of, hey, I already have a blog. That's cool. I can turn my blog post into a book, or you could use your blog to help promote your book. You're getting feedback from users on each chapter, right, as you go through it. Social media really depends on what it is you're doing. So depending on what you're doing, like if you're into the music industry, there's more than Pandora or Spotify out there to check out. So these are ways to connect to people that care about the same interests that you do, irrespective of geography. So the thing to remember though, whatever networks you decide to go with, everything should be connected. All the traffic, ideally, should be funneled down to people buying your book, of course. I'll also tell you one other thing about social media, and that's it's really its own topic. There's a 5-3-2 rule when it comes to social media. Make the 5 curating. curating other resources. The 3 is content you've created, and then 2 is like just personal fun stuff as a way of making that connection. If all you do is promote your work, nobody's going to connect, right? Social media is about being social and engaging and having conversations. So showing people that you have that expertise, well, they're going to say, wow, this guy really knows what's going on. I should check his book out. Okay, so it's a way of advertising your book, even though you're giving stuff away for free. But it's also a way, like I said, connecting by interest, not geography, very powerful. We have resources on social media. I do a workshop on creating your personal learning network. It's really great, but I'll leave it with that. Other strategies, press releases, book reviews. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to market your book. Every workshop I do, I give myself a plug. You know, I put it in my signature, my email signature, right? So there's lots of ways that you can work it into things you're already doing. Copyright concerns. Unfortunately, there are pirates out there. It happens. There's really nothing you can do about it. If you put something out, it can be taken. That's just the way our world works today. But you can submit takedown notices. So there are ways for you to go after them, but I'm not going to lie, it does take a lot of effort. I would say setting up Google Alerts is one way to be notified that somebody's taking your content, but it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. There are actually people that build that into their marketing strategy, and they say, well, I want my book to be pirated because the word is getting out. So again, I have some articles on that if you want to take a look. But it really, I don't think, should deter you from publishing. It's kind of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of idea, but something that you do need to be aware of. And then connections and resources, like we talked about, writing is not a zero-sum game, and finding other people that are doing what you're doing, right? And ways to do that, well, I have just flat-out websites about writing, you know, like author sites and that kind of thing. So they have blog articles with lots of good advice to follow, but then also notice about events and stuff like that. In addition to events that you come across from these websites, there are also some book publishing type events. We're very lucky we're in New York City, so there's lots of great stuff that happens here, and I have those linked. I would say just be aware of people selling you to promote your book at these things. That's not always, but sometimes a scam. There are organizations out there for independent authors. They also have a lot of great resources that you can use. When you're writing a book, you wind up doing a lot of reading. So if you can build that into your daily routine or weekly routine, that can be really useful. And then, of course, there's blogs out there. I've got a list of those for you too. And can't leave out the podcast. Everybody's doing it. One of the authors that I work with, he also has a consulting group called Fordham Road Collaborative, and they're going to start producing podcasts.